Hello and welcome to Frank's School, 173rd day of the fourth year, first video. And I'm going on with what I'm calling Waterlove. Here's Waterlove 2, second video. I have some apologies to make. Sorry about the film editing, quote unquote, at the end of the last one. I forgot to edit that off. You can just see this is amateur. I might fix it, I probably won't. Lack of link lack. I forgot to put the link on about the hydraulic theory of the origin of civilization. I will do that, I think, today. There was issues with there was a reason why I forgot. All right, so sorry about that. Now, I would like to also add to the not, what I am not going to be talking about with this Waterlove is not water sports. So many people just love that, to get in a boat and zoom around a lake or water ski, swimming, diving. I did that too. I used to like to dive and more dive than swim. But that would not be unusual enough for me to devote time like this to it. But I will add, though, a Mount Moosilauke. I don't know how to spell this, Moosilauke, in New Hampshire. I do remember there's a mountain there where several times in August, like the hottest day of the year, we drive up into the White Mountains. At that point, I lived in New Hampshire, and there was a place where you could climb the mountain. We used to like to climb mountains, but it wasn't to get to the top of the mountain. It was to climb up the waterfalls. You know, not a lot of water. It was also dangerous because it was slippery but we would climb up on a super hot August day with the water falling down over us as we'd climb up through. Now, that I guess you would call a water sport, and that I certainly did love. That combination of so hot, cold. Well, but anyway, how to organize all what I'd like to say about my water love. Well, I'm going to sort of go into my own life and sort of go chronologically. I was born in Roaring Spring, Pennsylvania. And I tried to think, well, what's my first memory of this fascination with water? In Roaring Spring, there's a place called the Spring Dam, and our house was very near the Spring Dam. And I remember getting in some trouble because I went down there by myself to play along the edge of the Spring Dam. I don't know how dangerous it was, but just think of how many children are drawn to water like that and drown. I remember, it's one of my very earliest memories, actually, getting in trouble for doing that. The other thing in Roaring Spring, there was a water-powered mill, a grist mill. Now, I was older then, but I remember just loving to stand there and watch that water go over that wheel. There was a place where you could stand and you could just see the water. It was a big wheel. It must have been a, 20-foot wheel. Well, so anyway, yeah, the fascination was there. Also, later, when that was Pennsylvania, later when we moved to New Hampshire, I had a friend who lived on the side of Rattlesnake Hill, they called it. And I remember loving to go with him up onto the mountain in the springtime, and we had a fascination with the spring runoff. We were sure we were doing wonderful, important things to speed the water up. Usually it wasn't to dam it, it was to rake the leaves out and speed the water up on its way down. So much fun to play. Now I hope that's typical of children everywhere where there's that kind of a season where you have runoff. We built rafts. We built a raft somehow down in what was called the Intervale. I wonder now. And I even tried whitewater rafting a little bit when I was older. No, that was when I was older. And my dad, he said that, now he was raised in Port Allegheny, Pennsylvania, and I remember him saying that they actually called themselves river rats. He was a river rat because he and his buddies spent all their time down at the edge of the river, fishing or swimming or doing something in the edge of the river. He even took us at one point down there to show where it had been. I could find it within a few hundred yards probably where it was. So this is maybe not that unusual. Now, coming up in my life, Old Sturbridge Village in Massachusetts, I remember my mother taking us there several times, and that was the first time, maybe even before Roaring Spring, that I saw a water-powered mill. at Old Sturbridge Village. I've been back there since. Now, since then, I've seen quite a few other water-powered mills. But anyway, that's a memory. I'm coming up through time here. Another thing, as a kid, we had a collection of National Geographics. I mean, that was also pretty typical, pretty big collection. Again, my mother's doing. She had bought them at an auction. And I remember looking through them and loving to look through the pictures. But what I loved to look at so much was the terraces. You know, that was like a version of travel then, and still now, except of course now you go online to look at so many things. But there was just something to be able to, you know, flip through the pages and to see those terraces from all over the world. At one point, I think in the Meadow book, I mentioned that as a kid. I think I liked that even more than seeing the topless women, which, you know, for a boy, oh, look at that, a topless woman. Cool. But the terraces, I loved them. Now, again, coming up in time, I traveled. When I was in college, I hitchhiked for a while, and I wanted to see the world. And I hitchhiked out west. And I remember on that trip, one of the places I stopped was a farm in, I think it might have been Idaho. And I worked on the farm for a day, I think just one day. And it was, everything depended on irrigation. That was the first time I really saw irrigation. Now that was pumped, of course, from the aquifer. But we went along with these siphons and pulled these L-shaped pipes, pulled a plunger to get the water out of the leat, is what I'd call it now, into the separate ditches that went out among the plants. So I'd seen that. Now, again, while I was in college, I was in the Peace Corps training, and I went to Senegal and Bignona. Senegal's in Africa, but this was a part of Africa, Senegal, where they actually had water. And there I saw my first rice paddies. Beautiful. I just loved it. But we were made to be terrified by schistosomiasis, I think is what it was called. We had this feeling, oh, if you stick your foot in that water, you're going to get schistosomiasis and 20 years later die with liver flukes or something. You know, so I wasn't able to go as much as I would have liked to at that time, but I saw them. I saw rice paddies. Coming home from that summer, I was in Fez, Morocco, and there the thing that I remember about water was in that old city of Fez, how the whole old city was built around a supply of water, and they gradually degraded the water as it went down through the city. So when you went down the hill, when you finally got down to the bottom of the hill, that's where they were dyeing their fibers to make their rugs and stuff. So the water, by the time it got to the bottom of the city, it was just terribly polluted with dye and everything. And then I eventually served in the Peace Corps for 3 years in Brazil. And during that time, this was the northeast of Brazil, then I witnessed drought. That was a part of Brazil, the northeast, that it wasn't by far the worst drought they'd ever had. But while I was there was a drought. And, you know, there was a rainy season typically and a dry season. And the rainy season, it would rain every night for 3 months. And then for about 8 months, it wouldn't rain at all. And I experienced that. Kind of leaves an impression on you. And at one point, I made a trip through Peru as a vacation while I was down there. And that's the first time that I saw water running across a mountainside. Yungay was the town where it blew me away to see that and to see the landscape of Peru. Coming home, at least one of those times, I went through Portugal, and in Portugal, there once again I actually saw terraces, and only last June, just 3 months ago, I finally was able in Portugal to find once again that place, that little town in Portugal that I remember so clearly seeing the terracing and that landscape, and that was Penacova, which is filmed. You know, if you go back and get looking at this, maybe I should give you that link too. Well, I don't know. All right. Anyway, in my life, there came a time then that I returned to the family farm, And by now the farm had been abandoned. No one had lived here for a number of years, I think 11 years. And I had separated, I was divorced eventually from my first wife, and here I was living alone. A farm, what to do? It had been abandoned. It was not good soil. And my mother, you know, she appears as a National Geographic buyer. Took me to Old Sturbridge Village. You know, she was there. Anyway, she had strong ideas, and I was not allowed to plow. Nope. Not allowed to fertilize. Nope. No spraying. I guess she was an organic farmer in a sense, but then, you know. So what do you do in the modern world on a farm if you can't plow, fertilize, or spray? What in the world can you do? I finally decided, well, I'm going to irrigate, because I was here and I witnessed the fields getting parched and dry, and they had cattle, that was, we called it a ranch. It wasn't really a farm. And meantime, going down the creek was water running, and I thought, well, this is crazy. I got water in the creek and the fields are dry, so I started to dig ditches. I started to irrigate. And around that, my mom and dad didn't like that very much either, but they hadn't said I couldn't do that. So I started to dig ditches all over the place. And at that point, I wrote the Meadow Book. And that's where I'm going to stop today. I felt that I needed to give some explanation to people who cared about what I was doing and what I was learning. I'll show you a version of the Meadow. This would have been about 1975. And at that point, it's about at that point that I actually very seriously began to get interested in this water love. Well, that's plenty for today. Bye for now.